Biren is into. So that's one straightforward answer. I don't want to elaborate, but I'll have Biren speak about it.
My one-word answer would be automation. Any kind of automation, whether it's industrial automation, consumer automation, AI-driven automation, analytics-driven automation, whatever that is, that automation is going to be really groundbreaking.
I think it's going to be voice technologies. If the inputs change from digital keyboard to voice, multiple languages, as an input to interpret and pull the data, that's going to drive the technologies. I thought that would be your answer.
So then, can you share your experiences where these new technologies have helped achieve building a better business or better somebody's life or something like that?
So I'm the first one to know. I know it's not at all. See, the reason why I'm saying Saurabh by mobile and anything that has to do with the mobile, and I think that includes automation as well as voice technologies and everything in it, is now just think about it, that I just recently moved to a new place, right? And now we no longer have a landline. We no longer have a cable or dish TV, right? Everything is now either it's directly OTT based, streaming of the programs, or just mobile based. All the connectivities and everything, your door locks in terms of the automation and all that, your lights, your switches, your fridge, your AC. So even remotes are going to go away. So everything is now kind of consolidating into that one device, and that voice technology is also part of the automation, and automation is also part of the mobile. Like nowadays there are so many companies that are working with the voice technologies, automation. You just send this message to someone and it automatically does that. But everything at the center is mobile. Automation is around it, and then voice technology is around it.
What he said by voice, whenever I'm bored, I always ask Alexa, tell me a joke. And it tells me a different joke every time. You can all try it. There are lots of jokes there.
And even in different languages. You can say Hindi and they will say it in Hindi as well.
So there I would definitely like to promote my own startup, Speak to IoT. Voice is the direction we are seeing. Voice is the new touch. So I slightly kind of disagree with Darshan on that front, that even though mobile has been the prime center of our lives so far, moving forward, everything that is touch we are going to go away from that, because there are inherent barriers. Anything you have to touch, you need two senses. You have to touch and you have to see that as well. So two senses are utilized in that interaction. Voice is where one sense is introduced. And you just give a command and that's it. And human beings are known for being lazy. So if something is 100% efficient, human beings are going to adopt that pretty soon.
It's good that we have diverse views. So I would say that sensors are the biggest disablers. Be it a visual sensor, be it a sensual sensor, smell sensors, noise sensors, pollution sensors. And a classic example all of you must have faced is the discipline in the city with the e-challan, which is coming with red light violation detection system. I was the one who was part of designing it, and I have received 3 e-challans. And now I know how to behave myself. Now you don't need cops on the street. It's a self-discipline mechanism. Pollution, Delhi has been visualizing this, and I must share one example. Probably I'm exceeding my brief. But one thing I'm visualizing and trying to work on a technology. You have sensors all around, you have pollution data, what is the NOx, SOx, COx. Why can't the signals automatically change the direction of traffic? Why do we all still head on to the same route? You could have redistribution of traffic within the city based on least polluted area, least congested area, and so on and so forth. So sensors, to my mind, is going to drive this world.
Anyway, coming back to this, so IoT, quantum computing, this thing. So what should students or people who want to get into this business basically look for or be aware of before they want to get into the business? Because nowadays a lot of business say I'm IoT and I'm into AI. And actually, in fact, we were reading some in the office, we had some analysis of some companies, and they are saying we are into AI and ML, but it was really funny. But anyway, so can you give some idea before jumping into this? What should people be aware of?
I think Biren made a mention that you should do a project which is required, otherwise it becomes a science project, right? It becomes an academic project. So you should start identifying the problems that are challenging our lives. And as again he said, that we didn't know technologies 10 years back that we are using today, and we don't know what's going to come up in the next future. So what I'm trying to say is, what are your challenges today? And the moment you come to the challenges, start demystifying those challenges, you will suddenly pick up these new technologies that can solve your problems that were not there. Let me pick up one problem. We have crowded streets, roads. Again, traffic is my pet subject, because that is one thing in our life that impacts the most, right? Hours of drive, wastage of time, and so on and so forth. So vehicle to vehicle communication, have you heard of that? So vehicle to vehicle communication is something that your vehicle communicates with an unknown, unidentified vehicle which has an IoT device. And what it basically does is communicate between two vehicles, and the best example is it should have an anti-collision property. It should not, even if you do a wrong drive, it should raise an alarm, and it prevents collision of two vehicles, whether sideways or from the front. That is one classic case of how IoT can probably be very useful. And I know of a student from Dhirubhai Ambani whom I am mentoring, who has really come very close to that, but is still away from that. The second similar to that is vehicle to infrastructure communication. Every vehicle needs to be connected to the signals, to the toll gates, to the police station. If police were to make some communication to all the car drivers on the street, how do they communicate? Loudspeakers don't work. Now these are real challenges of the life. IoT applications, ML, AI can be used as technologies to solve these problems. And hence my message to everybody who is trying to do a business or startup or is an entrepreneur in this area has to pick up this one or similar examples to develop their solutions.
So, just like very rightfully said, right? It's think of the problems you see around yourselves in life, and you get many different solutions. But whenever you come up with any kind of solution, think in terms of three factors in order for it to be a viable business. Whatever solution you come up with, it should affect either the top line of the company, it should generate more revenue than it used to do before that solution, or it should affect the bottom line of the company, that it should reduce the expenses after the solution than before the solution, or third thing, it should drastically change the stakeholder experience. Whoever is associated with the company must have a different kind of increased satisfaction in terms of human experience. If the solution is not doing any of these three things, then forget about it, frankly speaking. It's not a business entity. You have to focus on something as a sustainable, viable business proposal in order for that solution to survive in the future.
I think I would just like to add one more point in addition to these two, is that don't try to overthink. Just start something and start something small. We always feel that, if I want to start a company or something, then I need to be solving a big problem. Usually it's not the case. If you look at even WhatsApp, I'm just giving you very basic examples for that, or Splitwise. How many of you have heard about Splitwise, right? There are few guys. Splitwise was a very simple thing, that if you are going on a trip with 5 friends, at the end of the day, if you want to see that how much somebody owes to who, very simple logic, and got acquired by PayPal, right? So sometimes like small things you want to start, but then have a vision that is really grand, that you don't want to be satisfied with the small thing. But I think many of the times is the barrier to entry is like, it's our inhibition, like it's our mindset, 2% mindset that we didn't mention. So I think to overcome that, just take a plunge, start something with very simple but very profound, and then keep building on it.
I see a lot of students here, a lot of young people here. So as a developer, so I want to ask a very technical question, which I hope you face. As a developer, what are the typical stacks I can focus on to plan my career towards these technologies? This is a technical meetup, so I think a lot of young guys are there, so I think it might be a relevant question. So.
One vague answer, a hand wavy answer is whatever makes money, which is whatever your customer wants.
Biren, that's why everybody puts AI and ML in there, all there in the pitches.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they feel it's sexy for the investors, but it's actually not.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, you need to be basically super comfortable with whatever you're choosing. So personally, I am biased against Microsoft technologies, right, individually. So if I have to pick, I will not pick .NET or any other related technology, but that does not mean that it's not a great technology. There are some great developers who are super comfortable and expert in that kind of stack. So go for it. But whatever you do, go into the deeper, the depths and nuts and bolts of whatever you're doing. You have to be an expert at what you're doing in terms of general availability from a job perspective, from a professional career objective perspectives. Whatever is the buzzword, you have to be able to jump on. And I still remember the old college days where we had those thick 500 pages book to learn COBOL, learn C, C++. And it was like super challenging to learn any new language. But nowadays, you have to be open to learn anything in less than a week's time. There are enough resources available. So if somebody asks you, hey, do you know Python? Yes, I know. Say yes. And then start learning. Go back and start learning Python. If somebody says, hey, Node.js, do you know? Oh yes, I know, or I can. So can-do attitude is what matters more than the particulars of stack. Currently there are obviously the popular stacks, the PHPs and Pythons and Node.js and MongoDB and Apache and all those like buzzwords you keep on seeing. And there are some DevOps areas as well which everybody needs to pay attention to. One of the fundamental things though in terms of stack which I observe, like we have a big group of university students in San Jose area where we mentor those students. Every semester almost like 100 to 150 students alone come from Ahmedabad to do masters over there. One of the biggest complaints, and many of them are computer science graduates, not like certificate holders. They have never worked in the industrial setup, in the professional setup. So simple things, how many of you are aware of GitHub or Git repository?
All of that.
I hope.
It's free, so they all know it.
Even if it's free, so one of my biggest real life example is like out of 100% of the student, 80%, more than 80, like 90% plus students of master's degree in computer science, they have not used, they have heard about it, but they have not used hands-on simple things like version control. So whenever they go and apply for jobs, there is a lot of time they take in terms of professional training, and I'm sure here Vishal Bhai can do that. I have experienced the same thing. Whenever you hire freshers, you have to spend some time in training. So as a professional, invest in yourself with a can-do attitude, and whatever you claim on your resume, you should have like deep enough knowledge that you can be productive from hour one, not day one of your job. In Silicon Valley, companies expect that you, once they hire you, you should be able to do your first production commit, live commit in less than 24 hours. So you should be able to comfortable with that, whatever stack that is. It's a slightly long winding answer, but that's the reality of today's life.
You know, you are okay. Okay, I think we are done with the panel questions, and I open for the audience to ask certain questions.
I have a question for the panel. We talked a lot about voice technologies in the consumer sector. Would you like to comment on the voice technology enablement for the IoT industrial sector?
I can definitely take that. So voice, even though it's popular, it's visible in the consumer sector. So rightfully said, it's very visible, very obvious. The way Alexa ads are thrown at you, the way Google Assistant ads are thrown at people, it's very obvious that it's kind of making big trends, big headways into the consumer technologies. In the industrial domain, the adoption is always going to be slow, no matter what the technology is. Voice is not an exception there. So there are some industrial machineries which are on Windows 95, even though Microsoft has stopped support for that for a very, very long time. So difficulty of embracing change, the cost, the overhead of embracing any kind of change is really the DNA of industrial domain, because that has some valid reasons as well. Voice is eventually going to make a big headway in terms that it solves some real problems. So one example is, in the industrial context, it offers a hands-free communication. So whenever a worker is busy with hands and eyes on some other primary job, like let's say assembling a car, so whenever they are focused on assembling something, their eyes and hands are focused on a primary task, they can still use voice as a secondary channel to do command and control. So to increase their command and control bandwidth by 100%, that hey, open this shutter, or bring this crane over here, or operate this machine, or set the length parameter to X and Y, right? Set the precision to something, or increase the humidity level to that, bring down the temperature to Y, right? So all those things they can, while working on the primary task, they can do that. So that is just one example. Another example in the industrial setup is contamination. For example, in the silicon fab, wherever they're making those silicon wafers and microcircuits, that fab environment is like hyper clean environment. So even a single particle of dust is not allowed. Capacitive charges, like when you touch something, there is always some micro capacitor charges between your finger and between that entity. So even those charges are sufficient to burn those chips in certain scenarios. So in a fab environment, if you are touching something, some equipment to operate that, it might actually result into 10% loss, 10% less yield of the microchips being generated. Instead, using voice is like a touchless and safe interface. Even in the hospital setting as well, infection, contamination, even if you're wearing the gloves, gloves are at least touching something. And if the same glove is touching some other patient, there is always a chance for cross-contamination. So by avoiding touch altogether, by using voice as a touchless system, you can solve many different problems at many different levels.
Thank you.
Good evening. I have mainly two questions for the panel. The very first question is that we know about in TED Talk by Bill Gross, right? Which parents had previously given context on. That the single thing which makes any startup successful is the time, right? The timing is something which really matters a lot for any young startup. So like how can we as a small startup can utilize, and like we can never crack that timing, right? Once the timing is gone, then we can really analyze it, and then we can tell that all the demonetization happened. That's why Paytm really played well, and we can crack it afterwards. But how can we crack it before for young startups like us to utilize that timing part? And the second question is like if I were to pitch today, what is anything which would really make you invest in any startup? Any personally for you guys only? Yeah. There are videos available on the internet. What should we speak to the investors and those stuff? But personally for you guys. Thank you.
So I'll take this finally a question for me, I guess. But I think they both are related if you ask me. So whenever we invest in any company, I think the first thing that we look for is how capable and motivated the team is, and how quickly they can also adapt to new technologies, right? When Biren mentioned that many of these technologies were not available 10 years ago, now actually it is like on monthly basis, right? Like there are so many technologies, new stack, this and that coming on. But even the trend keeps changing, keeps shifting, and many of the businesses that were there like even a year ago, they no longer exist, right? So I think main thing is how far you can foresee and can predict where the trend is going, and how quickly you can adapt, right? As a team, as a founding team, how quickly you are able to pivot your vision, your direction, and everything. And that's where I think what Saurabh mentioned about TiE, right? That the mentors, somebody has to be with you who is like been there, done that in kind of scenarios, right? Who have seen this kind of ups and downs, who are more engaged and more connected into that circuit or into that business promise and all of that. So having those kind of advisors also really help. And the one and mainly thing that attracts investors, I think, is the commitment and the passion that you have about that idea. Now, whether you can execute that idea or you pivot it, that is different thing, but how strongly you believe and how much you are willing to sacrifice for that idea. As Biren mentioned, like for 2 years, if you don't have to take any paychecks, are you ready to invest 2 years of your time into that idea? If yes, like that's a great validation and all of that.
I think Darshan covered very well, so I don't want to just stretch the answer further, but agility, adaptability is really key. Nobody can predict the future, but how fast you can change yourself, your positioning. Just one anecdotal evidence from a survey that what they are saying is in the next 15 years, more than 40% of the Fortune 500 companies, these are like billions of dollars of big corporations, right? Not startups. 40% of the Fortune 500 companies are no longer going to be existing in 10 to 15 years time frame, because the only reason is they are too slow to adapt. So if you're fast, if you're passionate, definitely the time you cannot predict, but you will be able to change fast with the time.
Very important. I was at a conference, and this is a company, I think, based out of India, and is now a unicorn, $1 billion company, storage of memory or something. And they pivoted in 4 different funding rounds. They pivoted 4 times. So they changed the business model to adapt themselves to the next 4 times. Now they are worth $1 billion. But every funding they changed. Why? Because the mentors came in, the other people came in, and they saw the industry moving in a different direction. They changed.
Question for Mr. Patel. I have one technology in my mind, and I have a curiosity to know whether this would be reality in future or not. Like, can we transfer the power from one mobile to another? For example, if I'm transferring one file to you, and through that file your mobile get completely charged, no need to give a power external.
Yeah. So Darshan said we already have it, and that's what I was about to say. Like, whenever we think that something should be there, 99.99% somebody has already built a startup on that.
Okay.
In today's world, ideas are dime a dozen. I mean, they are great ideas nonetheless, but how fast can somebody execute? So wireless charging is like, it's already there. So peer-to-peer charging is just next level. So it's not like technologically really disruptive. If it has not happened or it has not come on our radars yet, it will be there somewhere in some other part of the world. Somebody must be working on it, somebody must be developing a business model on top of that. So my general guideline is, whenever you think that, hey, something is interesting, start building, at least do some prototyping, get some validation instead of thinking too long, sitting too long on that idea.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just add one word. Best is the enemy of good. Just keep that in mind. If you're waiting for the best, you'll miss the good and the bus is gone.
Hi, I have a more of a policy question rather than the technology one. So, economy is losing jobs, and technology is going to be like more of an automation driven, and it's going towards AI. So, even the jobs which are created because of the technology are more like a labor cost. Like Ola and Uber are using humans as a form of driver, which can be easily substituted. Like in next 5-10 years, we can see driverless cars coming up. So how is future technology trends can ensure sustainable development, sustainable economic growth in the near future?
Automation anywhere, which is into the robotic process automation. So they are now $6 billion plus company, and I think they are doing exactly what you are kind of fearing, or you mentioned the fear that whatever there is if there is a robotic process, so for example, manual reports, manual Excel sheets, anything manual laborious work, right? It's being now kind of replaced by robots in one way or the other. Whether it's a software bots, whether it's hardware bots, whether it's vacuum cleaners, those robots, or driverless cars and all of that. So people have always asked us this question, and there are two answers for it, right? One side is that this frees up a huge amount of human resources potential, right? Those who are just doing laborious, mindless work, now they are free to do so many other things that they were not used to do before, right? For example, now we can buy tickets on phone, we can order food now, and it frees up so much of our time in traffic and all of that. So it increases our quality of life as well, that you can spend more time with your family, whatever you want to do, right? So there is always that side of the question. And another thing that I want to talk about is that I have always believed that as a human race, I think we give ourselves very less credit about survival. This kind of transformations in automation has always happened. There are so many industries that have been wiped out. Many of the, like even VCRs or the MP3 players, companies like Sony, who was famous for Walkman, this, that, right now, they are no longer in there. But they have always adapted. Microsoft's now coming back again on the scene, and so is the human race. I think we need to give them the more benefit that they will find something more productive to do, more things to do, and it will sustain itself.
So one way to understand the same context that Darshan gave is like whenever automation happens, the traditional jobs get lost. Nobody can challenge and change that. Simple things is previously there was like hard labor, blue collar jobs. Then when the transformation to IT happened, that blue collar jobs lost, machines took over and people migrated to white collar jobs. All the from hand driven workforce to head driven workforce, intellectual workforce. And nowadays, like even the softwares and AI is started to write code and all that, so that all the head driven jobs, the IT jobs, they need to migrate and transfer to the heart driven job, more of a emotional, the human touch driven jobs. And even there, AI is actually taking over. I don't know how many of you are aware, but AI systems are actually writing novels of their own, completely creative work of art, which we thought human race has the monopoly over that, but AI systems are writing novels. AI systems are creating brand new music. There was an album released in 2017. Its title is I Am AI. It was completely generated by an algorithm. The entire music album generated by AI algorithm. AI systems are painting, creating brand new paintings as well. AI systems like deep fakes, for example, the new technologies like deep fakes. So you can take one picture of anybody and you can make that person say whatever you want. You can actually put words in that person's mouth and that person's lips will start moving as if that person is narrating those dialogues, just with one photo of individual. So you can create lots of mock information flow. But the gist of all that is, as human race, I think Darshan made a very good point, is human race has always been evolving in learning new things, and that's why I had one slide particularly that 1.01 raised to 365 is 37.8. We need to continuously keep on learning. If we stop learning, we'll die. Die in the sense, not die physically, but die professionally, die from a skills perspective, die from a utility perspective, like how much are we able to contribute to the society from those angles. Unless we continuously keep on learning, we will not be a predominant race in the future. And one fine cartoon I had seen somewhere else, where everybody, like humans, were walking, they were all looking at their phones, doing WhatsApp and Snapchat and Instagram, and robots on the bench, like two robots, they were reading books. So the title was, AI is learning and humans are entertaining. So if we continue to waste our time in false entertainment, then definitely we are going to lose a lot of jobs and a lot of livelihood as well.
On the flip side, when do you think that WhatsApp will come automatic in front of you on the scooter or something? Because I see a lot of guys doing WhatsApp and what need to phone. So we need a technology which just projects something in your brain and you don't need to see it while you're seeing the road. I think a lot of guys here see WhatsApp while they're driving the car, while they're doing on the phone. Because you know when the car is in the middle of the road, you know he's doing something else on the phone.
So actually there is a project called Neuralink or Neuralink. So you just don't have to give the commands, you just have to think about something and it happens. So there is a brain cap, so a lot of scientists, researchers have developed like helmets, like think of it as a smart helmet. So that would serve two purposes, it will save life as well as it will save time from both sides. So you don't have to do WhatsApp or open that thing, you just think in your brain that hey, send this message to so-and-so person and the message will be sent.
I think we should visualize it one step ahead, that we don't need WhatsApp. You just think about someone and the message reaches to that person.
I mean, save a lot of lives.
Next question.
We'll take the last.
I'm sure there are many entrepreneurs here. So my question is, hello. The main problem with startups are, they are being afraid of, their ideas get not copied. So, if you can guide us, how the startups can make sure that the ideas get not copied and how to get started smoothly,
We have kind of vague laws on that in terms of copyright infringements or even IPs for that matter, right? But I think the first and foremost way any startups do, even in US or in India, is that you start in a stealth mode. You try to stay under the radar as much as possible, so that whatever the proprietary information or trade secret that you have, you try to keep it within your team as much as possible. And meanwhile, you try to find out a way to kind of make sure that that is copyrighted or somehow there is an IP around it that you can file. And now there is an international website as well that lists all the international IPs and the copyrights and all of that. So you can search on it. You can even hire the lawyers or CAs that can do that for you. So meanwhile, while you are developing the product, you are developing on the prototype, you should simultaneously think about filing an IP or filing a copyright or filing a patent for that matter.
My thoughts are slightly different on that subject. People, no matter how hard, I mean, you should take some of the precautions, but no matter how much you do, your idea will be copied. So go with that assumption. So the only remedy to that is you move so fast that people cannot catch up with you. So your solution has to be better, faster, cheaper to the market. If that's the attribute, then that's okay. Forget about copying. Don't even worry about, don't even think. Don't even use your brain energy about thinking that, hey, somebody's going to copy. People are going to copy. And whole China market, including Alibaba and all the big companies, they are copycats of US companies. And they are like billions of dollars of valuations. They are successful in that geography. So people are going to copy once you are successful. The only sure way to beat that is you move so fast in your execution with high quality. If the value is there in your solution, don't worry about the competition.
Here I'll just add one thing. When you talk about your IP, what is your idea? See, there is an idea of vehicle-to-vehicle communication. That's simply one word. Does it have an IP? The IP is in the detail. The IP is in the solution. And as Biren rightly said, look at many companies which have similar thoughts but different models of execution, different USPs. So don't worry even if you're midway and your IP is copied or your idea is copied. Think of innovation, think of creativity, think of a value that you can deliver, and the differential value is enough to make you a unicorn.